I won't lie to you guys. Some players in the National Hockey League have me in full panic mode. Others, not even remotely worried. We have had a ton of people reach out about specific players, what to do with them. Should I start panicking? Do I drop them? Do I trade them? So this video will go over 6 of the most popular players that we've seen over the first couple weeks of the season where people just don't know what to do with them right now. Without further ado, guys, these are 6 players that might make me go into panic mode. Let's get into the video. All right, I'm going to go from least worried to most worried in terms of my panic level. Steven Stamkos, I'm not concerned at all. I know the Preds have had a really slow start. This pretty much goes for everybody on the team, not just Stamkos. If you have a guy that's struggling, like UC Saros, for example, could have easily been in this conversation. I chose to go with Stamkos. Just scored his first goal as a Pred his last game. Average time on ice is well over 19 minutes. He's line 1. He's power play 1. I guess you could call it line 2 at this point because the top line is Philip Forsberg, Gustav Nyquist, and Ryan O'Reilly, which is what they ran last year. So technically it's line 2, but whenever you think of Stamkos, you think of a first-line player. He's 15th in shots per 60 with 11.31. These are players with a minimum of 100 minutes time on ice. There's a clear issue with the Preds at 2C, and Stammer transparently has not played a lot of center recently at all. A lot of the times he would just like fill that role kind of in Tampa when they needed him to, but with guys like Nick Paul there and Anthony Cirelli, Stamkos was primarily a winger throughout the last couple seasons at least. So they've tried him at center recently. I'm not exactly sure if that's going to stick or if they plan to actually go out and get a 2C, which is very difficult to acquire, by the way. If you look around the league, there's not a lot of like genuine good 2Cs that are available to be acquired, but there's going to be continued growing pains with this team going forward. As you can see, they're obviously not clicking very well off the start based off of their record. They've lost 5 in a row. Hopefully they turn that around, especially if you are a UC Saros owner. But with Stamkos, I'm just not worried at all. I think it honestly gives you a really good buy low option, given how good his shot volume has been and the fact that he chips in the hits category as well. He will continue to be a fantastic player in fantasy going forward. I did flag this as a concern. If you guys remember my must avoid video, it was more so focused on Philip Forsberg, but it had a lot of key points in the fact that there's a lot to say about guys that can't survive in an offense where there's 3 incredibly high shot volume, right-handed elite goal scorers, essentially, and Jonathan Marchessault, Steven Stamkos, Philip Forsberg. So I addressed that in a previous video. We're kind of seeing that early on here in Nashville, but he's 29th in expected goals in the National Hockey League currently, and he's a negative 2.3 goals above expected, which is the 6th worst player in the National Hockey League with a minimum of 100 minutes time on ice. This just goes to show you how incredibly underwhelming Stamkos has been, and that he will probably bounce back. I can't imagine that he will go another 6 games without, registering a goal, let alone a point. So I'm just really chill on Stamkos right now, not panicking at all. Hold on to him, keep him on your roster, don't trade him, he'll be fine. Zach Hyman was a massive regression candidate going into this year. I almost upped my panic meter on him a little bit prior to doing the research, but after I'm seeing some of the numbers with him, I'm really not worried at all. A lot of people are just very confused what to do with him. I think there's a little bit more risk involved with Hyman than there is a guy like Steven Stamkos, just because we know traditionally Stamkos is around a point-a-game player. Hyman just came off of that incredibly high ceiling goal total of 50 plus last year. Again, I flagged it earlier that he's a regression candidate coming to this year because of his shooting percentage and the fact that, he likely won't ever score 50 goals ever again. I digress. Well over 19 minutes time on ice. He's line 1, he's power play 1. The shots per 60 are actually a lot lower than you would think out of a guy like Zach Hyman compared to last season, where he's hovering around the 7.3 shots per 60 mark. We saw him well into the 10s last year. But his shot attempts per 60 are more or less the exact same as last year. So these are good signs. This just essentially means that, he's trying to shoot the puck as much as possible, whether it's getting blocked, whether he's missing the net. The fact that his volume in which he's choosing to shoot the puck has remained the same. These are good signs. He's 7th in high danger shot attempts for, with minimum 100 minutes time on ice, and he's 21st in expected goals for in the National Hockey League currently. If he's not scoring, it's kind of an issue, and this is what I was addressing earlier in preseason content. was the fact that, this guy is typically not a high point total player. He gets his value from his shot volume, his hits, and his goals. And that's primarily why you go out and draft him, alongside the fact that he plays pretty regularly with Connor McDavid. The one year we saw him 2 years ago essentially double his assist total was clearly an outlier. He's never had over 30 assists in a season outside of that one season where he ended up having 47. That being said, I do think he's going to turn around and should start producing at a much more efficient rate, given the fact that he hasn't had a single point yet is slightly concerning, but I'm not too panicked as of just yet. All right, somebody who I'm a little bit more concerned about is Ryan Nugent-Hopkins, and I think the reason why is simply because the fact that he tends to get moved around the lineup a lot more than a guy like Zach Hyman. He also doesn't really have the peripherals to be an influential player in fantasy when he's not producing. But that being said, he has 3 assists on the season already, 2 of which are in his last game. And those both came from, you guessed it, playing alongside Connor McDavid on that top line. As long as he's playing with McDavid, there will be a ton of value for Ryan Nugent-Hopkins. This is why you seek out this player during the draft in the first place, is that he's very good on the power play. He has some great point totals, especially when you look at his point floor over the last couple seasons. And he plays with the best player in the National Hockey League. Shots per 60 are really low, and really low at 4.8 shots per 60. This is like defenseman. This is like mid-tier defenseman level shot volume coming out of Ryan Nugent-Hopkins. But again, it's to be expected, but it's actually like even low for his standards. The whole team is struggling, like I said earlier when I was talking about Hyman, but again, I'm not overly concerned just yet when it comes to Nuge. There's obviously a bit more risk there, where if they continue to move him around the lineup, simply because he does seem to be that piece that they constantly move around, where there's sometimes they play him at center, sometimes they move Draisaitl up onto McDavid's wing. He's always the guy that's just a flexible piece that they seem to continuously move. So if there's a chance where he doesn't skate with McDavid or Draisaitl, it really tanks his value. And that's definitely happened over the course of the game so far in the season. You can always move him once he kind of gets going and his point total starts to kind of like fill out a little bit more. But the non-peripheral players, like we mentioned, every single year can be very frustrating to deal with. And that's why we always preach getting guys with good peripherals on top of scoring upside. Moving on to Elias Pettersson. Now, this one is interesting because I have no idea what's going on here, to be honest. 1 goal at 5-on-5 since signing his contract last year is an absolutely absurd stat. His shots per 60 has absolutely fallen off a cliff, gone from 7.7 to 4.6 shots per 60 this year. He's still getting a ton of ice time, well over 19 minutes time on ice, obviously on the power play 1, but line 2 skating alongside Nils Höglander and Connor Garland is not really something you typically get excited about. I think if they had like DeBrincat there with him, he would probably benefit a little bit more than a guy like Höglander, but the Canucks top 6 is really kind of thinned out now that I look at it from like just a paper perspective. And there is times where he's playing alongside JT Miller, in which case I think, really benefits Petty and Miller. But that's just not happening for whatever reason this year. He's kind of on an island alongside Höglander and Garland. Canucks fans, let me know in the comments down below what you guys are seeing out of Elias Pettersson. I looked up some clips of him recently because I was just genuinely curious. Like, oftentimes you don't see a guy like this really struggle that significantly early on. Like, Petty's usually around a point-a-game player. It's still early enough in the season, I think, to turn it around, but I think he does propose a slight buy low opportunity. Probably not as significant as a guy like Stamkos or Hyman, given the fact that, Petty does have 3 points already on the season. And sometimes you just look at it and you're like, okay, he's got 3 points in 6 games. All it takes is a multi-point game to turn around, and that's literally what it is. But again, it does propose a little bit of risk. The goal scoring and the shot volume are like sending off red flags in my head right now and alert signals that something is up. It could just be the fact that he's genuinely getting unlucky. His shot attempts seem to be more or less like it's pretty much in line with his shots per 60, where they've kind of like fallen off a little bit. But something to monitor with Pettersson going forward. Like I said, I think it's early enough of the season that he can turn it around. I'm not at an extreme level of panic just yet, but it's starting to get there if the goal scoring doesn't pick up. All right, Miro Heiskanen, and I'm in full panic mode with him, transparently. It's always tough early on when you draft a player that like you expect to do really well offensively and they don't produce early on, and you're just kind of stuck with like, okay, what do I do now? If he's racking up around like 55, 60 points, then that's where he holds his value. But I think Thomas Harley is a real threat to take him off of power play 1. He is just a very talented offensive defenseman with a great shot. Dallas has currently the third worst power play at 9.5% in the National Hockey League. That is insane. So I think it's possible that they actually end up trying Harley on the top power play, something to keep an eye on going forward. And if that happens, then this breaks the panic level scale for me, because not having a point through 7 games is incredibly concerning for a player that you are relying on to just pick up points. And so this makes me think, okay, like, he's so incredibly different in the playoffs, it seems like. Like, even his numbers are drastically different, much closer to a point-a-game player. And I look at a guy like Heiskanen, and I'm like, this guy has all the talent in the world. He should be around a 70-plus point player consistently, very similar to like an Adam Fox, for example. But I don't know what's happening in Dallas right now with him. He's getting a ton of minutes. He's turning into Jacob Slavin, which is terrifying to say out loud, because like Heiskanen has so much upside. There's not really anybody blocking him, even though I do think Harley could potentially be a power play 1 defenseman in the future if things start to really not work on the power play for Dallas and that continues on. But yeah, I'm in a bit of a panic mode with Heiskanen. I won't lie to you. Seeing this start from him is not what you want, especially if you drafted him as like your D2 or your D3. If you draft him as your D3, it's not that bad. But if he's your second defenseman off the board, then you're just kicking yourself at this point. So I think going forward, I think your best bet is to hold on to Heiskanen and see if the power play starts to turn around. And when the power play starts to turn around, he will definitely be contributing in that sense, hopefully. Even if, fingers crossed, he does keep the power play 1 role. I'm just like, there's a lot of like alarm bells going off in my head right now. Pretty concerned with Heiskanen going forward, but you can't really do much this early in the season. You kind of just have to hold on to him. See if there's somebody out there that's willing to buy low if you get some good return. We never, ever recommend selling on players when they're at their minimum value. So don't do that. I'm not recommending that you trade him, but if you can get decent return for him, maybe it's something to consider. But your hands are kind of tied at this point. You kind of just have to hold on to him and hope he starts to turn around offensively. And finishing up our video, guys, Elias DeBrincat. I was absolutely shocked when I took a look at his game log and saw so many 1s, especially in the shot category. Like, what happened to this guy? He used to have a great shot and hit volume, and it's just seemingly disappeared in the first 6 games of the season. I thought he was going to have a great start. You look at that first game, 5 shots on goal, 2 goals, an assist for 3 points, 1 of which on the power play, and you're like, okay, great. Like, I snagged some good mid-round value out of DeBrincat. And it's just like, it hasn't come to fruition in the past like 6 games beyond that. Like, he's just not shooting the puck. He's getting under 18 minutes average time on ice in 4 of the last 5 games. His average time on ice is technically below 18 minutes on top of that if you look at all of the games played, where he's 1747, he's playing line 2, and he's still getting power play time. This shot attempts per 60 last season were 1971. This season, down to 1237, guys. I don't know what's happening. Wings fans, what are you seeing happen with DeBrincat right now? Do you think he's just in a bit of a slump? He's been publicly stated that he wants to be a more consistent goal scorer. I remember watching an interview on him prior to one of the Wings games. I don't have an answer right now. So you kind of just have to hold on him. Hopefully he turns it around. If you lucky that you can get a string of games where he puts up a couple points here and there, and the shot volume isn't god awful what it is right now, along with the hit volume, you might be able to end up selling this guy. But again, we don't recommend selling at the very low value. When you see sell beside somebody's name here, just please keep in mind that you need to wait until they have some type of value before you try offloading them to whoever. Just trading somebody at their minimum low value is never good for you. You're always going to end up losing, especially when it's like a highly touted player. Like think of Stamkos earlier in the video. I'm trading for a guy with 1 goal. He's going to be a lot less value than trading for a guy that's over a point a game. So hopefully things turn around with DeBrincat, but I'm incredibly worried going forward. He's playing alongside Patrick Kane on that second line, so I didn't think that there would be a lot of issues. But JT Compher's the center. He's not a bad player by any means, but again, like, it's just, I'm not seeing any type of shot volume, or even the shot attempts are coming down. That's the thing that worries me the most, is the shot attempts per 60 are just so significantly down from last year. So definitely worried about DeBrincat going forward. You kind of just have to hold on to him and hope that he turns it around. Before you guys take off, let me know in the comments down below who a player is that you're panicking on. If I see anybody comment Timo Meier in the comments, I'm going to be really upset with you guys. Don't even get me started. That guy is completely fine. Don't worry about Timo Meier. No Timo Meier slander on this channel. He will be good. Also, let me know what you guys thought of the video style. Is this something that you want to continue to see going forward? Players that like I'm panicking on, or that we're not panicking on, or vice versa? Let me know what you guys thought of the video down below. I'll see you in the next one. Good luck in the rest of your fantasy hockey week.